Hey, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing well. Yeah, guy. Yeah, guy. Welcome, everybody. Spit. It's the Spit podcast. Last week, I recognized that I didn't say yeah, guy, and I wonder if anyone else noticed that. I'm
I
hoping they
didn't.
didn't. I'm hoping they didn't. Maybe we can just be done with this silly phrase.
Would you actually want to be done? It's your catchphrase.
It's not really my. I guess it is mine, but I mean,
It's become yours.
yeah, which maybe isn't very good. Who knows?
That's funny that you say that. I did not notice, but apparently that means you go back and listen.
Yeah, I do. I listen to our stuff. I listen to all of my podcasts, and I've mentioned this before, on 1.5 speed.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And I want to bring something up, David, because there's a podcast that I think I listened to yesterday that I think you might be fascinated with. I was, and I know you've listened to Tim Ferriss before, right? Tim
Yep.
Ferriss.
Yep.
So Jordan Peterson was on his latest number 502 on the rules for life and psychedelics and the Bible. It's just a really, really insightful, fascinating. Uh, he's a guest, obviously. He's a really good guest. I know you've listened to probably to Jordan Peterson in the past. He rankles some people a little bit, but I find him to be an important voice and one that shouldn't be that should be listened to. And it's a really, really insightful podcast, the Tim Ferriss Show, number 502.
The first few times that I heard Jordan Peterson, it was before he was famous. And then there was all sorts of controversy about him and his viewpoints, like you said, rankles people. And I was confused. I was
I
like,
know.
what are they upset about? He just said fact, and I don't understand what they're upset about. So then I started reading the criticisms and the complaints, and they were all completely misinterpreting anything that Jordan ever said. And the fact that he's become a polarized figure is so insanely bizarre to me. And I don't like wholesale subscribe to 100% of everything that he says, or even like share the same views on life or the world as he does. But he does state a lot of fact. And so you can kind of ascribe your own worldview to that fact and have an opinion on that fact. But he is largely just saying facts, you know?
Yeah.
It's really
I,
shocking.
I totally agree with everything you said there. There's no doubt that you're sort of befuddled as to why people would be against a scientist. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
he's a Harvard trained 20-year clinical psychologist. The thing that rankles people are some of his I don't even want to say opinions, but like some of his viewpoints on patriarchy.
Yes.
That's where a lot of people are like, "Oh my God," and but they do take it and they twist it.
Well, to me, they aren't even viewpoints. They're just conclusions that he's drawn based on the facts. So it might be something to the effect of throughout history, this is the way things are, and this is why men behave in these roles and women behave in these roles. And then people freak out and they go, what? And he goes, he's not saying women should behave in these roles or men should behave in these roles. He's just saying, if you look at history and fact, and I have, and here's all the numbers and the data and the stats, it's logical that then these roles would be played by both, and so
Yeah,
people confusing that and thinking that he is forming an opinion or something like that is what's crazy. And they're the ones who are obviously projecting an opinion more than anybody with less
exactly.
fact and less anything.
Yeah,
But I will listen to that. I saw Tim Ferriss advertise that, and I immediately was like, oh, great. Like people are going to be up in arms because Jordan Peterson. But then my other thought was I haven't actually listened to Tim Ferriss in a while. And I don't know why. I listened pretty steadily for a year or two, and then I kind of got off it. It's almost like how much can the listener, you and I, be focused on trying to improve our life and improve our efficiency and improve, because one episode, it's like, okay, now let me sit with that for 6 months and try to apply some of these things. But if you listen to 2 episodes a week, it's just all overwhelming. And I feel like nothing sticks anymore. It's too much.
There's some fascinating stuff on psilocybin, mushrooms, and the fact that some states are legalizing them, and what that means to society, and what actually psilocybin does to opening us up to, um, for lack of a better phrase, a spiritual experience. And I did not know that Jordan Peterson was in the alcohol and drug. Um, I don't know what the phrase would be, but he was or a clinical psychologist, and alcoholism was his primary focus of all of the drug and alcohol abuses, I guess. He specifically focused on alcohol, but he has plenty of insight into studies on psilocybin. And it's pretty interesting, man. There's some really fascinating, pretty deep stuff. And I agree with you. When I see Jordan Peterson, I sometimes go, oh, I like listening to him, but I know he's, for whatever reason, he gets I think he gets a bad rap.
Oh, for sure he does. No, and he could not be more measured and methodical in his approach, like real clear-minded, blue
Yes.
flame, just like, and so it's shocking to me that people project that he's something other than that, because he couldn't be more just kind of straightforward.
Yeah.
Regarding psilocybin, I've been tracking those conversations for a couple of years now and listening. I mean, mainly through podcasts, certainly Tim Ferriss talks about it. I feel like Sam, what's his name?
Yeah, the meditation guy,
Waking Up.
Harris.
Sam Harris has talked a bit about it, or interviewed a lot of people about it. Joe Rogan, with a much more less scientific kind of approach to it, but having scientists on. And a lot of them are researchers and academics that these people will have on as guests. And it certainly seems like there's a lot of potential for, healing trauma, and then also kind of expanding consciousness moving forward. And I don't really experiment with drugs, but I'm totally open to the concept of it. I'm certainly not opposed to it either, even though I don't really experiment with them, And the idea that like a lot of this stuff has been used for, centuries, and basically for all of humanity. And the idea that now we can kind of isolate variants and use very specific dosing for very specific traumas, I think is where the big revolution will come, to where it's not, because people having a bad acid trip in the 70s and never thinking the same way again, obviously is a scary thing. And a lot of our generation, or maybe my parents' generation, that grew up with that as like the stereotype, are scared off. But the reality is that's not the only option for doing things like psilocybin, doing it in a controlled environment. And even if it's grown by, a laboratory, not chemically, but like naturally grown by a laboratory for a specific variant and all that, makes a lot of sense. It makes a whole heck of a lot more sense to me than the pharmaceuticals that are synthetically manufactured. Like that epidemic that we've experienced in the last decade or two has gotten out of control and will be looked back on really, I think, negatively.
Yeah. I if any of the stuff that David's mentioning interests you, the listener, you should listen to this podcast, because it is fascinating. And I just found it engrossing, and I couldn't get enough. I was bummed when it ended. It was one of those,
Okay, cool. I'll definitely listen.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up from last week's conversation. We were talking about privatizing wave rights.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that was a total rumor. I got the owners of Google are not buying Cloudbreak. The people who are involved in ownership at those resorts are pissed that the rumor even broke, because now they're fielding tons of inquiries about it. But on another note,
it was a jumping off point for us for a much bigger issue.
They're not mad at us. They're mad at Beach Grip for publishing the article.
Really? How mad?
You're
an idiot.
What was the word you used? Rankled. So on another note related to that. Somebody said, 2 of my friends who had no money managed to surf Cloudbreak back when you weren't allowed. They got dropped off 45 minutes away and they paddled all the way in. They had 4 to 6 foot waves all to themselves for an hour before getting told to leave. It was pretty tricky, so I don't think many would do it. They planned for it for years. It is the best option. Um, is the best option is to have a test of ability and limit numbers and time on the break. So that's an interesting kind of question, is like, look, if that is the limitation to it, look, if you could paddle 45 minutes in, you're welcome to surf it for an hour before our boats get there.
My hat is off to those gentlemen for their gumption and their moxie to charge it like that, to plan. I too have planned a strike mission. It was, of course, during the pandemic, and it was at 2 feet cold, closed out Torrey Pines State Beach. But
you finally revealed the spot.
Yes, I just did.
Only took a year.
I just revealed it. But in many ways, their 45-minute into 6-foot Cloudbreak is similar to my 5-minute sojourn into 2-foot Torrey Pines State Beach.
It's basically the same thing.
Similar, very similar.
By the way, should we celebrate the anniversary of when lockdown began? That's coming in a week or two.
Yes, we should celebrate.
Remember, we're going to celebrate the anniversary of the 2-week lockdown.
Yeah. I don't know how we do that, but
a year later, as we're locked down.
I know, right? It's all quite strange. Surfboard shaper Phil Becker sadly passed away of cancer on the Big Island. He was 81 years old, David, and it's noteworthy. Phil Becker shaped over 130,000 surfboards. And what's really noteworthy is that a majority of them, as in probably upwards of 95,000 of them, if not more, were all shaped by hand, no machine shapes.
Unbelievable.
He was known among shapers as a workhorse and also very unassuming, never in the limelight. And David, I would suggest to you that if you put 6 men in a lineup, I don't think I could pick Phil Becker out of the lineup.
I know I saw a couple of photos of him in the last week and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. I had that same thought.
Renowned shaper Pat Rawson from the North Shore, who's originally from Los Angeles, and who will be the Icon of Foam honoree at the Boardroom show here in October. He points to Becker as an important mentor, and I've heard Pat talk about Phil a lot. And he once quipped, and by the way, I'm taking some clips, some stuff that I grabbed from the internet. This was from Surfline. And this is what Pat Rawson had to say. Phil was a shaping machine before they had shaping machines. Phil Becker worked in the same shaping room his entire life, the one he first switched the lights on in the Rick Surfboards factory back in 1962. He used the same 3 Rockwell planers he bought in 1965, rebuilding them every couple of years. He cranked out an average of 2,500 boards annually. And when inducted into the International Surfboard Builders Hall of Fame in 2009, they reported that by 2004, Becker had shaped over 130,000 surfboards. Next in line, Al Merrick with 45,000. Jose Barahona, today Becker Surfboard's primary shaper, had this to say. Phil Becker was one of a kind. Barahona, who immigrated from El Salvador in 1981 to join his brother Oscar, who was a sander at the Rick factories. Jose said, I was sweeping floors in the factory when I first met Phil Becker. And I guess he saw some potential in me, and I started doing more sanding, airbrushing, and eventually shaping. That he saw something in a 15-year-old kid who couldn't even speak English, to give this kid a chance to be a part of the Becker Surfboard team. That says a lot about the kind of man he was. When Phil retired to the Big Island 10 years ago, he handed the name Becker Surfboards to me, this kid from El Salvador. And I'm proud to be representing his legacy, said Jose, who still today dances around blanks in Becker's original shaping room. I take that responsibility very seriously. Becker was so dedicated to shaping his surfboards. I mean, he didn't even get married until after he retired. I think he was afraid marriage might jeopardize his work. There's one thing that I remember him saying to me. He said, Jose, never forget that you're not just making surfboards, you're making toys for grown-ups. There's nothing more satisfying than seeing the smile on a grown-up's face when they come in to pick up their board. It's easy to make a kid smile, just give them a candy bar. But if you can make a grown-up smile like a kid getting a candy bar, well, then that's really rewarding. So our hats are off, and rest in peace, Phil Becker.
Yeah. Great read. It's interesting how these things exist in our awareness that you never really investigate. Like Becker's been a part of my surf life. Like, I mean, it must have been in the first 100 boards that I ever saw in magazines and at the beach or whatever. One of them had to be a Becker. Maybe the first 50, one of them had to be a Becker, and they've just always been there. But I never once investigated interviewing him for the podcast or finding out what he looks like or anything like that. But those boards are ubiquitous. They're everywhere.
Yeah, it is. You know, there's that South Bay area there that in the 60s was the hotbed of surfboard manufacturing. Granted, there was a little bit with G&S down in San Diego, and of course Hobie and Dana Point. But I mean, you had, you know, Hap Jacobs, Del Velzy, Greg Knoll, Bing. I know I'm missing quite a few. Dewey Weber. That whole area down there, right near El Segundo, that whole zone was just this incredible hotbed of surfboard manufacturing. And Becker was amongst them, right? But I never mentioned Becker in those names. You know, like Becker was in that group of guys. Of course, he worked at Rick Surfboards, building boards for Rick for a long time before he went out on his own. So maybe that's part of it. But anyway, you're right. Very unassuming guy. You know, in the article on Surfline, they talked about him surfing at lower trestles well into his 50s, and guys would drop in on him. No one even knew who he was. You know, like you were dropping in on Phil Becker, and you know, no one knew. You know,
which I admire. I really appreciate that stealth lifestyle. And also like in business too, you know, there's so many flamboyant, flashy, want to be in the front of the camera. If they're the CEO of a company, want to be like, you know,
well, in the surf world, in the surf,
that's what I was just thinking. I was going to say
a ton of guys like that.
I was going to say they're the CEO of the company and they want to be interviewed for the Billy Kemper documentary, or just sitting quietly and taking market share. You know what I mean? Like, sure, we could name Bezos and like a few. I don't know, maybe Steve Jobs was kind of one of the first of that generation in that tech world to kind of just like leverage the limelight to actually build the brand. But quietly, there's been dozens and dozens of CEOs for oil companies and everything else that came before it that just quietly ruled the world. And by the way, there's a lot of, while there might be a way to leverage growth for your company, there's also a lot of risk once you're a public figure like that. And there's actual risk for your family. And so, you know, what's the company?
My Pillow.
No, I'm thinking of the, yeah, that's true. I'm thinking of the pharmaceutical company that was being sued this past year for the opioid epidemic. Like, we don't even have a photograph of anybody in that family. You know what I mean? So, and that's wise and that's savvy for them, especially when the market turned against them because the opioid epidemic, their kids are probably targets at this point. So the fact that nobody can find a photo of that family is probably a good thing. Not just for criminals, but just for living a life of anonymity.
You know who comes to mind in the surfboard world? I'm trying to think of shapers that are kind of like Phil. And Marcio is a lot like that. Marcio's just very much like, he's super smart. He's got a lot of humility. He's humble. He's not seeking the limelight. He's building beautiful surfboards for world champions. And you know,
you're talking about Marcio Zuvi from Sharp Eye, just
exactly. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and there are a lot of others too. There's a lot of guys like a Mike Wisnant from the East Coast comes to mind. There's a ton of guys that are just kind of just doing their thing and are incredible craftsmen. And at some point, I feel like they deserved, their name needs to be called out once in a while. You know, good for them.
Well, for sure. And who knows if they even want it called out,
I know,
And
that's the thing.
the funny thing is Zuvi, when he won the stab, spoiler alert, this Taj Burrow stab in the dark, um, he almost didn't want to accept the trophy. Like they gave it to him and he's like, oh, cool. So cool, you guys. I didn't know you're doing this week. All right.
Yeah, you
That's
got the
cool.
feeling that he realized, he goes, oh shit, this is that moment where I'm supposed to be excited.
Right. But he doesn't have an excitement button,
Yeah, he's very even keeled.
You mentioned Wiznant, and he is worth discussing, and he's actually a subscriber, a donor to this podcast, Scott.
Oh,
He signed
cool.
up a couple of weeks ago or a month or two ago. So shout out to Wiznant, and he's quietly building boards, Jacksonville, I believe, and
Forever. Like
forever.
yeah.
And then his laminator posts, it's like an epic Instagram to follow. If you're interested in what laminators do, it's called Useless Toys Glassing. And it's just beautiful imagery day after day. Like the one thing I noticed too about Album Surfboards when they got going was not only are they making beautiful boards, but they photograph them beautifully. And that's how I feel that really helped, I think, their growth. And I think the same thing goes with Wiznant's laminator, is he's doing killer work, but then he knows how to shoot it as well. So you see this imagery every day that you're just like captivated by it. It makes you, it doesn't feel like it's
Well, one of the things that Matt Parker does really well, and there's a lot of guys that do this that are very savvy about their brand and their brand aesthetic. And Christensen is like this, Matt Parker, but to me, they're almost like Apple.
Yeah.
In that it's very curated, it's well thought out, everything is on brand. It's like the opposite of me, you know what I mean? Like I'm showing up with, there's shit's hanging out, no unshaven. Everything is on brand.
That's on brand, by the way.
It is. Oh, by the way,
if something was curated for you, it'd be off brand.
This is a fascinating topic because I'm going to segue real quick. I got into a conversation with a well-known surf journalist about who was the GOAT, Kelly Slater or Tom Curran. And he's like, are you kidding me? Did you see that edit with Kelly Slater and Mason Ho at V-Land? Kelly was just so polished and knew the wave and every little bump and blah. And I went, well, I thought Mason kind of stole the show in that little edit. And he's like, yeah, Mason, blah, blah, blah. And this conversation evolved into Tom Curran. And I was like, dude, Tom Curran's the GOAT. Come on. And he's like, yeah, but I mean, he paddles out a skimboard with a torn wetsuit and with a leash wrapped around his waist at Rincon. He's riding these just gross thing, And I was like, that's why he's the GOAT. That's why Tom Curran is the GOAT. Tom Curran is the GOAT because he is off brand. That is his brand. His brand is to be off brand. And oh, by the way, he doesn't even think I need to be off brand. Like it's so not manufactured. And I'm not saying that Kelly's is, but you get the feeling with Kelly that it feels like everything he does has to be approved by something or somebody somewhere, like on Fifth Avenue. And, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, and I'm not, and I think it's even unconscious or subconscious. They're kind of the same thing. But the thing about about Tom Curran, like no one can pull off roller skates at a trade show like Tom Curran. And Tom Curran didn't plan that. He had a hurt ankle or something. And he goes, I'm going to try these. He was at a thrift store and happened to grab a free scrubber. That is incredible. And that's why this concept of off-brand and on-brand is so fascinating to me, because there's guys that try to be off-brand and it fails because they're trying. Tom never tries. His brand is off-brand because it's authentically and organically off-brand.
Yeah. I think that sports grow to a level where there can be two GOATs, and the one that you identify with says more about you, is kind of what it's come down to. And so, LeBron and Kobe or Jordan or whatever it is, Muhammad Ali and Tyson maybe. And so the one that you identify with kind of shows, oh, it's because you're methodical and pragmatic, or it shows that you're just a brute and whatever. But I agree with you. I mean, if I had to pick one, Tom is the one that I want to associate with and hang with and surf like, ultimately.
Yeah, it's the unpretentiousness of Tom Curran. The fact that he would pick up a thing and go, free scrubber.
Yeah.
But I just go, this guy, it wasn't planned. That wasn't, he was just like some guy happened to have filming. Anyway.
So what I think about sometimes is Oh God, I gotta delicately word this so as not to offend anyone who loves Tom. Uh,
That would be me, so be careful.
uh, so I feel like you know who ends up committing suicide are geniuses. You know, like Van Gogh and stuff like that, where the weight of your own genius and smarts, like you can get in your head so much that you see all of the pain in the world and you see all of the injustice in the world and all that sort of stuff, and none of it makes sense. And so um whereas on the very opposite end of the spectrum, no pun intended, you have people with really low IQ who are super happy all the time. They're just like blissfully blissful, gleefully blissful
Thank you.
all day, every day. And they don't have a care in the world. And something like self-harm doesn't even fall into their realm of consciousness, you know? And so I think about that sometimes. And Kelly is closer to the genius side of things, to where it's like, can you ever, you're just always thinking, you're always in your head, there's always something else to do, there's something that you didn't finish, and there's some other thing that you have to grow and progress, and you got to work on your surfing, and it feels so exhausting. Whereas you feel like Tom Curran is just dancing through life, and it doesn't matter, oh, I didn't cash that $10,000 check, you know,
Yeah.
that you talked about.
Yeah.
No big deal. Who cares?
Yeah.
There'll be another one down the road. I'll get it. I ate today. I'm good. You know, that seems like a better way to go through life.
Some of the topics that you just touched on are in that Ferris Jordan Peterson podcast. He goes into some of that stuff. It's pretty fascinating. So it's neat that you sort of connected those two things.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm team TC.
Right. We all are. Even if you think you're not, you are.
You just haven't watched closely enough if you think you aren't.
Yes. The Red Bull Cape Fear event is returning
on
Ship Stearns Bluff. My thoughts on this, David? I'm excited. It was fun to watch when they had it in Sydney there at Hours. The last time they had it at Ship Stearns, I believe it was underwhelming. Right? Don't you think? Do you
I don't
recall
remember.
that? Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I remember one event certainly wasn't as exciting.
Yeah.
Was that
so?
Okay.
So my thoughts are, I'm excited for this, but is Sophie making noise back there? What, she got a little squeaker? Yeah, David's beautiful black lab. Let me see Sophie. Let's see what she looks like. Oh, I want to see. Can we have a picture of Sophie? Can you bring her up here so we can see her? Or not?
Yeah, I will right now. She was fighting me for that squeaker. She wouldn't let it go. Sophia, come here.
Oh. How big is she?
I don't know, 55 pounds or so.
Oh my God.
She's grown a little bit.
Yeah.
She's about 55 pounds at this point.
Oh my Lordy. She's going to be a big dog.
Yeah, I think this might be it, actually.
Oh, really?
She's kind of stopped growing. I don't know if she'll have another spurt, but she's kind of stopped growing.
She's tall. She looks like a tall dog.
Long girl.
Okay.
You know, it's funny, her personality's changed in recent months. She was such a delight, and we bragged to everybody like, oh my God, she's amazing. Now she's got her voice, she's barking a bit, she's a little bit she doesn't bite people, but she'll bark at them. So if we have people over or whatever, she just gets all obnoxious, and people are afraid of her. It's a bummer.
Yeah, you just need to train her a little bit. She's just protecting you, right?
Exactly. I blame Lauren, actually. She doesn't need to protect me. She knows I'm the alpha, so she'll do anything. I could do anything with her, but Lauren is the one she needs to protect.
Well, anyway, it's fixable. She's probably really intelligent and highly trainable, so you should probably get on that.
Yeah, she's pretty intelligent, I'd say.
Yeah.
All right.
And I learned the other day, by the way, I was interviewing the kid that got attacked by the great white shark, Keen Hayes. And that's coming up in the next Boardroom podcast. It's an incredible podcast. But when interviewing him, his mom we were talking about their dog, and they found this little button that emits a noise that gets the dog to chill out.
Like if they're barking or freaking out?
Yeah.
Okay.
When somebody comes to their house and the dog freaks out, they just push this button and the dog goes.
Perfect.
Sounds a little bit mean, maybe. I don't know much
No,
about
I'm
it.
into it because
Yeah.
I've tried a couple of bark collars. They're not super effective. And then I tried the citronella one and it just didn't work. And then I got a
Yeah.
different citronella one that didn't work. So and then I gave
Yeah.
up.
And
So,
they had gone through some of those processes too, and they finally found this one that seems to
okay.
work good.
Good info.
So my feeling on Red Bull is that they should not run this thing unless it's borderline
Okay.
crazy. We've seen so much content from all of these slabs in Australia, wherever they might be, that we expect incredible triple ledge drop, crazy wipeout. Like it needs to be redlining, or they should not run this thing. They can't run it just to run it. They need to have the balls to pull the plug if the swell doesn't show up during the supposed swell window.
Agreed. This is obviously a problem surf has found itself in forever. Once they build out the infrastructure of the event and kind of start advertising, they want to run it. And so it's
Yeah.
hard to wake up the morning of and red light,
Yeah.
especially if there's no promise of green lighting it in a future swell. So they generally just green light and run the half version. But I agree with you. It doesn't do well for the
Yeah.
brand legacy if it's not a great event.
There's just been too much great footage of these spots to put an event on in less than.
I'll tell you what, I have not felt that level of excitement for any event that I did when they advertised this. I think it was on their Instagram yesterday. I was scrolling and it's Chris Cote calling Russell Bierke into a wave. And did you see this clip?
I saw the clip of Russell Berkey recently.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, yeah.
Was it the same clip?
No, it was from a previous event,
right.
Previous Cape Fear event. But it's like Bierke just getting whipped into this thing, going full speed, multiple steps down, pulls into this gaper, and then the camera angle switches from the cliff into like the jet ski angle, looking into the pit, and you're watching him navigate the thing. And as he comes out, eats it and just gets sucked over the falls and starts like ragdolling as he's getting sucked over the falls. It's just pure pandemonium. Every single second of that ride was just pandemonium. And you go, oh, I forgot about that event. I'm so psyched it's coming back. That is what we want out of competitive surfing,
Yeah, exactly. Now,
ultimate.
Of note, and you might have seen this as well, women will be competing in the event for the first time ever. Laura Enever and Lizzie Stokely will be two of the best. Well, I think it's just those two.
Are they just is it just an open division? So they're against the men?
I think so. I believe so. I think they're all just going to be together.
It's the kind of event that it doesn't matter who wins. I don't remember any of the past winners because it's just so exciting to watch,
Well, what I remember is Russell Bierke. Like to me, this event is all about Russell Bierke.
But did he
that's
win
what I
it?
remember. I don't know. I don't care.
Neither. That's
I'm like you. I'm like you. I don't care.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. But what I remember is Russell Bierke. Like if you were to say, remember the hours event? I'd be like, yeah, Russell Bierke was mental in that thing.
And that's why, they don't need a separate division for the women. If Laura Enever goes out there and just gets one epic ride that everybody remembers, that's adequate. She's done her job.
Yeah.
You don't need to win the event.
Yeah. Well, a dangerous surf spot. And sadly, we are looking forward to some wipeouts. I got to admit.
Yeah.
I mean, is that true? Do we really want to see wipeouts?
I'll tell you what.
In your heart of hearts.
I would say no. If you said Russell made that wave instead of ate it, the one that I just described, I would have been just as psyched had he made it. However, yesterday, it might have been Pulse Surf on Instagram, posted a Wipeout Wednesday reel. Oh my God. It was an epic. Like I was just every next clip, I'm like, how's this going to end? How's this going down? And then somebody flicks their board at somebody else. I'm like, oh, didn't see that one coming. Thought he was going to go over the falls, like it was super fun to watch. So, and I remember, surf videos from when I was a kid, the wipeout section was a highlight.
Oh yeah.
Everybody looked forward to that.
That's so true. And that's true that's a universal truth right now, right? So we do want to see wipeouts at the Red Bull Ship Stearns Cape Fear event.
I do, but I'll tell you what, it's a different scenario when somebody gets hurt.
Yeah.
Like watching that Billy Part 2 documentary
Ooh.
on WSL.
Yeah.
The end clip when he gets smashed,
Yeah.
it does like leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And even you could tell they were leading up to the clip just by the, you know, music cues and stuff.
Right. Right.
And it was like, as he like bottom turned and started racing and you see that thing doubling up, there was like a pit forming in my stomach. Like, oh no, this is the one. Oh no. And then he eats it and you're just like, shoot, I think that's the one. And so, yeah, it does kind of leave a sour taste in your mouth. And I think Luke Davis even said, we're going from having the best trip of our life to having the worst trip of our life instantly, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, there's a fine line. You're right. You know, we don't want to see anybody get injured. We do want to see some wipeouts.
well, because it reminds us of our own fragility. You know what I mean? Like, it's easy just to go surfing all the time and not have a care in the world. And then you get your board hits you in the head once and you're like, oh shoot, it was that bad. Am I bleeding? Like, and then you're super cautious from that point on, you know?
Yeah. I mean, look, I've had a couple little teeny, super small little falls, not even what I would call wipeout, just like a fall where like I caught an edge or something and I fell and landed on my back on
Saxon's board.
No, 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 not that. But my point is that in that kind of situation, like a 2 to 3 foot wave, and just be like, oh my God, I've had a wipeout, you know, like,
yeah.
Like, you know, I
or
had like a moment
you feel
where
a
like,
shooting pain or something, and you're like, what was that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you realize, wow, man, like stuff these guys are going through is major. I in my youth, I've had some pretty painful stuff happen, but
it's unbelievable when we watch those wipeouts from Jaws every year at that event. It's unbelievable more people don't get hurt. It's crazy what their body goes through.
You know what I would like to find out is, you might recall one of the very first Mavericks. It wasn't even an event. It was like when Mavericks was sort of coming onto the scene. I want to say in like 97 or whenever it was. And Eric from Power Lines, what's Eric's last name again?
I forget. Yeah.
Yeah. No, is it Kurt? No,
it's not Eric, I don't think.
Kurt. Anyway, the guys from Power Lines had this video. They put out this video, like insane Mavericks, whatever, you know, like a 2-hour video. And in it, a guy takes a 3-wave hold down.
Oh,
do you recall this?
No.
It was like the first 3-wave hold down. It was like the kind of like the you know, like the penultimate moment of the video where they show this 3-wave hold down. This guy just, you know, it was brutal. And they interviewed him afterwards, and it was obvious that he was shaken, like it was a near-death experience. And I want to know whatever happened to that guy. Like, you never saw that guy ever again in any Mavericks. I'm sure he paddled back out eventually at some point, but
who knows? I mean, that'd be an interesting story. How many people gave up surfing after a bad wipeout?
Yeah, fully gave it up. Like, just didn't just surf their 3-foot beach break, but just said, it's been a life-changing moment.
Yeah.
Crazy. Not very many. I bet there aren't very many. I bet there aren't very many.
I remember Shane Dorian, I forget what video it was when I was a kid, but he took a lip to the head at backdoor, like a big kind of 8-footer, drops in like a proper hollow one, drops in and he's bottom turning, and the lip, while he's at the bottom turning, the lip just axes him in the head and just pile drives him. And he said that he didn't surf for 2 weeks after that. You know, it rung his bell, so he got out of the water and then just stayed out of the water for 2 weeks. And when I was a kid, that was really impressionable on me, and because I was like, man, I'm not a pro surfer and I surf every single day, and I couldn't go 2 days without surfing. What could possibly keep you out if you were a professional who lived in Hawaii? And that'll do it.
Yeah, pretty gnarly stuff. So Cape Fear, Red Bull Cape Fear event at Stearns.
And we have an event at Newcastle.
Hey, so of note, right? That plane leaves today. Doesn't it take off from LAX today? There's a tube.
I think it's March 6th is what I remember.
Oh, okay. I thought it was the 3rd. So there's a flying metal tube with wings that's filled with every top surfer in the world. They're all on this plane together, right? Like, is Kelly Slater on this plane? Did they fly from Hawaii to get on this plane? I mean, it's a special charter, right?
Yes, that is the plan. So are they on the plane or not is a great question that we've been asking for months now, 2 months now. But on Stab Premium, they did write about it, and they said that the alleged cost for that plane is $500,000, and the WSL is selling seats on the plane to
To who?
the athletes,
Oh,
to
oh, you're kidding.
anybody who wants a seat on that flight to go compete. They're selling seats. Economy is $2,500. Premium economy is $4,000, and business is $6,000. This is a one-way fare, and surfers are responsible for making their own way home. And
Wow.
that
That's a pretty,
is, well, it's it's not the WSL trying to get rich off selling
no, I
seats.
know.
It's them trying to cover their cost.
Right.
But I agree with you. I agree with you. I was kind of shocked to see that as well. And then on top of that, hotel quarantine costs once you get to Oz are going to be about $2,500.
So $5,000 just to get there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you get like little eye coverings and some socks on the flight?
Better be a fancy blanket. I want like a proper down duvet.
Taking that thing with me, man.
Well, okay, so that's $5,000. If you get last place at a CT event, it's $8,000. So you can,
you'll be breaking even with a rent a car and food.
Right. And so nothing to send home to the wife and kids, but enough to break even.
What if you have multiple wives and multiple kids? Then you're screwed.
Now you're broke.
Yeah,
might want to stay home and get a job at Amazon.
I was looking at the forecast. There's a couple of mean cyclones in the Coral Sea that are predicted to form. Doesn't mean, I don't know if it means much for Newcastle unless it gets around Byron Bay, but or the Byron headland there. But the Gold Coast is going to be lighting up.
Yeah.
And I know that doesn't matter because they're not going to the Gold Coast.
Last week, I kind of stumbled upon the idea of like, what if we lose because we have lesser events on tour this year, QS quality events? What if we lose people like Jack Robinson and some of these great surfers that would actually thrive in a dream tour scenario, and then they're not on tour for 2022?
Yeah, we talked about this last week. This was our main concern. Yeah.
And a couple of people responded and said, well, in order to get kicked off tour and for somebody to fill their spot, there would probably have to be a QS tour. And are they even running QSs? I mean, we know that they are running a couple, but not enough to probably justify picking, a worthy group of athletes that need to get bumped up to the CT level. So I'd be shocked if they actually applied the same old math and equation that they applied in previous years. Of course, we have no word from the WSL onto how they're going to do the qualification math in the next year, but it'd be shocking to see somebody who won 2 1-stars, let's say, throughout 2021 replace Jack Robinson, who got last place on the CT or something.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen either. I agree with you that, especially because the way the system works is the people that fill in those last 10 spots on the CT come from those elite QS. What's the elite QS called?
They were 6 stars for a while. They're primes for a while.
Yeah, whatever they're called. They change every year, the name of them, but
10,000s for a while.
There's some other name now, I think. But anyway, they're not going to take 1-star guys and put them into the.
Well, if they only ran 1-star events is what I mean. Because they're not, they haven't run any prime events as far as I know.
No. Yeah, the winner of the East Coast Surfing Championships probably isn't going to make it into the.
But in theory, there could be a scenario where there were only 1-stars run, and and maybe each one had a different winner, and they all have very marginal points. But the CT still has a bottom tier of guys who normally get bumped off by the top tier QS guys. So that would be a weird changeover if they applied the old math. It would be for a very forced fit in 2022.
You and I have spoken about what fills the void if 5 years from now this thing goes away and there's no central governing body of pro surfing, and it evolves or devolves, depending on how you look at it, into this deregulated, decentralized nation state thing where Australia has their guys and Brazil has their guys and North America has their guys and Hawaii has their guys. and Tahiti has their guys. And then they all decide to get together. They all determine 5 guys, and they get together for the Triple Crown in Hawaii every year. And I was talking with Ian Cairns about this, and we came to the realization that the ISA already has this in place. Like, this could all turn into just the ISA running the whole deal, because they have all of the relationships and everything's set up because of the Olympics for this already. Nation states bringing their best to a central location for a championship. Every 4 years, it's called the Olympics, but those other years, it's called the World Championships, and it just turns back into 1966 ISA running the whole deal. This thing's like given to Fernando. It's just like, here you go. Like, that's an opportunity. Let's take a commercial break and get back to this.
Okay. We're back from commercial, Scott.
Yeah, eBay sneakers. I'm a big fan.
So what were you talking about? You're talking about the ISA.
Right.
The
potential changeover if and when the WSL is no longer around.
It makes sense that they would be in line. They have the infrastructure. I have a question for you, though.
Yeah.
I know coaches, for the ISA. I know a bunch of surfers that competed in the ISA. I still have no interest in watching an ISA event ever. And as you were talking, I was trying to analyze why. And it's because the format, it's a 3 to the beach format. And they're doing it in crappy waves. Yeah. They come and they do an event in Huntington, then they go to Virginia Beach. I think they're actually in Virginia Beach right now. Yeah. Or maybe it's Florida, somewhere in Florida. Yeah. And it's like, and then I watch them do 8 like windshield wiper turns to the beach. It has zero interest for the viewers. So and then I see who won and I'm like, okay, I don't know, who cares? Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean anything to me. So I agree with you. They have the right infrastructure to do what you said. However, they would need a strong rebrand to change their identity.
Yeah.
In the eyes of the viewer.
I agree. Even the logo is lame.
And the name is lame. ISA. Like, what is it?
I don't know, but you're right. There would need to be some changes, but what we were getting at was,
I get it.
Administratively, there's a framework there, and so that could be the deal. And what's fascinating about that to me is that you could get somebody like Carlos Munoz winning the world being the world champion. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, if you bring 5 guys from each nation state to the Triple Crown for 3 events in Hawaii, you could get some interesting, and I think that's kind of cool, right? Yeah. Like this idea that some guy from Israel could friggin' win the world championship. You just don't know.
It is interesting. I think ultimately you'd end up at the same conclusion that we have now, though, which is
John and Gabe.
Yeah, those people, Carlos Munoz would win every year in his country. He's a big fish in a small pond, and you'd have a bunch of those. And so you'd think, logically, let's just put all the big fish in a pond together and let them fight it out at the best waves around the world. Yeah. And that's kind of what we've been trying to do. Yeah. Did you see Rip Curl sponsors the finals event for the WSL at Lowers?
I did. Rip Curl sees a big void and they're seeing an opportunity and they're jumping at it. And Claw, Doug Warbrick, and Neil Ridgway, smart guys grabbing a hold of this thing, I think.
That is the story here. And we talked about it with the 4-event run in Australia, which they sponsored those as well. They're amazing at gaining market share when everybody else is down, just everybody else is scared and they're holding on, they're zipping up their purse, tightening up, holding on to their money. And Rip Curl's going, perfect. We'll come in, give you pennies on the dollar, and then we'll own it. And we'll sign a 3-year contract so that we own it when things are ripe again. And not that a 3-year contract means anything, by the way, because Outer Known sponsored Cloudbreak for 3 years, and then it promptly disappeared 2 weeks later, and we've never seen it again. So, but I think this is a smart move for Rip Curl. It doesn't affect me one way or the other, or it doesn't. However, I didn't know whether or not this is a conflict of interest, you tell me right out of the gates, you'll know.
Yeah.
The WSL immediately is posting about the relationship, and like championship will be decided in one day and kind of promoting the format, but they're using obviously Rip Curl's athletes in the imagery. So it's a shot of Gabriel Medina, who will take the world title. It's a shot of Tyler Wright, who will win the world title on the final day at Lowers. And it's almost like, obviously Rip Curl is going to want their athletes used in the promotion of the event.
Yeah.
But I also feel like it's a little bit of a scripting, not that the WSL would change the numbers. You just really shouldn't, as the organizing body running the contest, you really shouldn't be using one person's imagery to advertise an upcoming world title. That was my
Well,
problem.
here's what's interesting about that, right? Is that in the past, Billabong was great at this, and all the companies were great at this. They would love to take Kelly Slater's image and use it to promote their event. Because now all of a sudden they're getting Kelly Slater for free. And people are like, oh, Kelly Slater, Rip Curl, I get it. Like people, your general, everyone doesn't follow that. Hey, they're getting some free skin from Kelly Slater here. And so obviously the WSL is like, look, we can't use other brands' athletes, or we'll have to like get sign off. It'll take forever to get it done and blah, blah, blah. So let's just use your guys. So my feeling is Rip Curl was like, okay, that's cool too. But if you want to throw in, Idolo or Ethan Ewing or whoever, fine, let's do it. But if you can't, okay, here are our guys, So I don't think that, I don't think that Rip Curl negotiated, hey, you can only use our guys. I think they went, look, we got to get this thing out there, use our guys. That way we don't have to deal with trying to get sign off from everybody else.
My feeling was the opposite. When I saw it, my thought was Rip Curl probably did negotiate that. They probably said, and that feels like the WSL's back is against the wall to me. It feels like the WSL needs the money.
Yeah.
They'll do whatever, they'll sign whatever. And yeah, okay, we'll use your guys. And then that now completely undermines the objectivity of the competition.
Yeah, I don't know which way it went, and it would not surprise me at all if they went, hey, you can only use Rip Curl people if we're going to sign this document. That wouldn't surprise me. But again, I feel like they're also savvy enough to go, please use the greatest surfer in the world as a way to promote our event. But
who's that?
Well, in their eyes, it's probably, as far as, I know you're going to say Gabe, but I'm going to say North America, it's Kelly, right? I mean, Kelly's hanging out with Charles Schwab. Rip Curl wants that mojo, you know what I mean? Or Charles Schwab's son. Same difference. Schwab.
What mojo is that?
What do you mean?
Rip Curl wants that mojo of hanging out with Michael B. Schwab.
Yeah, like super uber successful billionaires. Like,
yeah, but Gabriel's hanging out with uber successful millionaires who are in the celebrity limelight.
I agree. So, like, wouldn't it be great if we had Kelly Slater and Gabe representing our event? Yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah. It's all suspect to me. I smell a fish.
Yeah, it's fishy. That's the thing about the ocean. It smells a little fishy.
Did you watch Andy Irons and the Radicals last week?
No.
You should.
Should I? All right, I will. Is it better than we did? Oh, good.
It's really good.
I mean, how can you not like Andy Irons? I mean, at the end of the day, we were kind of poo-pooing Ashton and all that, but
I don't remember doing that.
Yes. Was it me?
I don't know. I don't remember either of us doing that. I feel like you just revealed a personal sentiment.
No, we were kind of going, look, we've got enough Andy Irons. Really, isn't all of the good Andy Irons already out there? I mean, it's like we've milked the living shit out of Andy Irons.
Yeah.
And then to go find B-level stuff, we felt like maybe it was a stretch. But then we also said, who knows? We haven't seen it yet. Let's see what it reveals. Maybe it'll be cool. And like I'm saying here, like the end of the day, if it's a good edit, a little more Andy Irons is pretty cool. It's kind of like watching Tom Curran. It's like can't get enough.
So it's Andy is the central figure, but it's more talking about the cultural revolution that came with Andy. And it's told around, Andy as being the central figure, but kind of about the Lost movement. Honestly, episode 1 was more about Lost than it was Andy. And episode 2 is going to be about the Log Cabins house. And these air Thursdays on Stab Premium. And so I really enjoyed it because it was a very kind of important moment for my early upbringing in surf. This is when I was getting into surf, and these things were highly influential. And those early lost videos were the ones that we would just watch over and over.
Yeah.
And what's hilarious though about it is viewing it in the eyes of history. Like, these people are talking historically about my formative surf experience, and I don't view myself as an old person yet. I view that as being like, oh yeah, no, that was like, I don't know, 10 years ago, right? Because that's when I was getting into surfing. No, that's 25 years ago at this point. That is actually history at this point. And of course, we have enough hindsight and context to understand how influential it was. And at the time, I was being influenced by it. But it just was what it was, you know? So to be able to look back now and recognize. And so Ashton did a good job of kind of stepping back and looking at it with the historical lens. And it changed everything, you know? It totally changed everything. It changed the way clothing is sold. It changed the boards that people rode. It changed how we judge surfing competitively. Changed everything.
When you say it, what do you mean it?
That movement that was kind of centered around.
What movement?
Well,
help me out without seeing the video. I haven't watched it. So like
I would say what Andy Irons, Chris Ward, and Corey Lopez were kind of doing with Lost, promoting them.
Yeah.
Changed the way that Kelly Slater competed, changed the boards that people were riding and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I don't think you could argue with that, with the power of the Lost marketing machine. It was incredible. And Mike Riola deserves a lot of credit for that, as well as Matt. And there's a lot of truth to all of that stuff.
And Mike's in it.
They grabbed a lot of, what they did was they embraced what surfing really was, which was sort of this, what surfing's always been, has been a little bit Hell's Angels, a little bit motorcycle, a little bit anti-culture, a little bit, Kerouac, a little bit, off the grid. And they were smart, and they went, that's because to them, I mean, if you're in the San Clemente surf ghetto, they got guys dying of heroin next to the glass shop, you know what I mean? Like, and so that's what it was to them. It was authentic too, it was like, and then, you had Herbie as an influence, and Herbie was a great, that whole vibe was just, I think the San Clemente surf ghetto and the people behind the scenes there really helped shape a lot of that stuff, the Dana Point Mafia, even, you could go that deep into like, guys like Daryl Diamond and, I mean, there's a lot of characters back there that helped influence the way Matt and Mike saw things. Because Matt and Mike weren't really from San Clemente. I mean, and so they came in, got work, got jobs. I think Mike's from Florida. I don't know, but anyway.
Yeah, I forget too.
They really did a great job of embracing, that whole vibe, that sort of dark vibe, I'm going to say, the sort of dark vibe, which was the antithesis of like Quicksilver, Echo Beach, look how clean and scrubbed and polished we are, and Lou, Danny Kwok, and and they just went, you know what, that's not my experience. I'm here in San Clemente, and it's pretty rough, it's pretty gritty, it's pretty raw, and we're going to bring that and put it in your face, and it's in the name of Chris Ward, Andy Irons, and the Lopez brothers, and some other guys, like some other kind of really sketchy San Clemente guys, that quickly blew up in everyone's faces. And we're going to throw, who was the drunken guy?
Randall.
Randall, thank you. We're going to throw Randall down your throats too. And there's no doubt that the marketing, I mean, the story to me is the marketing machine that was those Lost videos,
Well, you should watch it because it covers a lot of that. Yeah, and again, it's interesting as a kind of creating this historical context that I didn't even realize was history yet. I'm watching it just thinking, oh yeah, they're just telling the beginning story but no, that is the story, is that cultural revolution.
There was a video they put out, I think it was called Lost at Sea.
Yeah, I loved it.
And that was the one where like they got Andy pounding beers in the tube at HT's.
Yeah.
And And I think that's the one where things went pretty bad.
Yeah.
That trip, I believe, went pretty bad for Andy.
Great soundtrack on that video.
Anyway, this is right in your wheelhouse. So this to you, this is like, you know, this is like my free ride. You know what I mean? Like when I was 15 years old, I was going, oh, free ride was probably 10 years old by then, but I was still going, oh, you know, because surf movies, there was no surf videos back then. But anyway, that's cool.
Well, check it. Yeah. I'm enjoying the series.
I'm going to check it. I'm looking forward to
it. By the way, Scott, we owe a huge shout out as always to Neat Essentials. The waves have been flat. I have not been surfing nor wearing a wetsuit.
Yeah.
Is it flat down there?
Well, it's been fun. It's small, but it's been blue and crystal blue. Okay. The water is really, really cold. So I have been suiting up, and Neat Essentials, I'm big fans of everything that they do. I was just in Santa Barbara. I was thinking, I should go visit Rob, but didn't come to pass. But
well, Ryan from Neat Essentials in Australia reached out to me. They're going to be debuting a new 4-part series with Torrin Martin and his filmmaker, a new Lost Track series. So we can look forward to that, and we'll discuss it on air. But I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Those Torrin Martin films that drop every once in a while have been pretty pivotal kind of in our awareness for the last 2 to 5 years. And I haven't seen one for a few months. So I'm excited to see what they've been working on. So there's that to look forward to. But again, Neat Essentials for wetsuits, for outerwear. Dude, when I did Tahoe 2 weeks ago, it was all Neat Essentials. Neat Essentials snowboard pants, which I use as ski pants. The puffy jacket with the hood and the shell, the outer shell.
Yeah.
All of it's perfect, you know?
Yeah. How is the snow?
Amazing, dude.
We scored. I'm totally jonesing. I want to go. Last night I was looking, I was like about to book a ticket. I'm just like, I got to go.
To where?
I was going to I might go to Big Sky in Montana, but it's friggin' pricey. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll just go to Snow Basin. I usually go to Snow Basin in Utah. It's super simple flight to Salt Lake and jumping around a car, and you're up there in an hour. It's perfect.
Cool. So we did Heavenly, South Tahoe, and we skied Thursday, and it was like empty and super fun. And then Friday was super windy, so we canceled the tickets. They closed the gondola, and but it snowed that night. Like it was windy all day and then snowed that night. So we woke up Saturday morning and it was like 6, I think, plus inches and sunny, and giant line to get up there. But once you're on the mountain, it's all spread out enough up there to where lines aren't too long. And it was like Saturday was the dream day.
Wow. That sounds killer.
It was a blast. Yeah.
How many runs do you get in before you're like, I'm good?
Dude, nobody can hang with me. Like I want to ski all day. Like I will show up at 9 a.m. when they open, and I'll ski till 4. And by noon or 1, and I won't even take a lunch. I'll bring beef jerky and a couple of bars. And by like 11:30 noon, people are like, let's grab lunch. Let's have a drink. And I'm like, what? And then they sit there for an hour or two, and then it's 2:00 and they're like, let's just do 2 or 3 runs and go home. And I'm like, we spent so much money, so much effort to get here. Like I want to get 30 runs in, you know?
Were your friends that were ready to hang it up, were they snowboarding or skiing?
Skiing.
Okay. Skiing is way less,
tiring.
Wear and tear on your body, tiring.
Yeah.
Skiing is the way to go. I should start skiing again.
Yeah. I grew up skiing, and then I snowboarded through high school because I got peer pressured into it with my surf, friends. And then after high school, went on a trip with my dad and my grandpa in Colorado, and they were skiing. So I'm like, I should ski again. And I never put a snowboard back on.
Yeah, that's smart. You're just laughing. You're just standing there watching some guy with a wet butt trying to get his snowboard on. That's me.
Exactly. Well, for anybody who's going to the mountain, Neat Essentials.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have my whoop thing, by the way. Did you get your whoop?
Yeah. Whoop.
Your whoop.
We're not supposed to talk about it yet.
Oh, all right, whatever.
We have an onboarding call this week where we can.
I want to start using it because
I know, me too.
I was longboarding the other day, and I was just getting such an intense workout. I was like going hard, and I was thinking, okay, tired, do another lap. I was like, oh God, if I had that thing on, I'd be knowing what I was up to. But
well, I know, and my buddy. So this is going to be perfect, and we'll just tease it now, but we'll cue listeners in later in a week or two. Actually, April, 1 month from now. But a buddy who I was skiing with that day tracks everything on his watch, and he's like, I got up to 65 miles an hour on that run. And Andy told me exactly how many runs he got in that day, how much mileage he covered. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting being able to track it. I never would have even thought. I have no idea how fast I've ever gone on skis, and he knew. So
Did you feel like you wanted to beat his number?
no, not at
good.
all.
Yeah, smart.
He has like brand new skis. He gets them waxed all the time. Mine are like 20 years old. I don't.
All right.
I have limitations.
Right.
Well, hey, so talking about, we're going to talk about must-see moment, and I've got a Duke because I got to get off air pretty quick. But for must-see moment, you were saying you haven't watched Andy Irons and the Radicals. Have you watched Billy, the documentary?
No.
So that is exactly what I suspected that you would say. And my question to you is, are we too old for surf videos?
No, I don't think so. I should probably watch. You know what it is that I put too much preconceived BS on stuff. Okay. I'm too close-minded. I need to go into these things more open-minded. Like, you know what? Maybe I will enjoy it. I usually look at it and go, I think I know that, and, you know. But I mean, I love a good story. I guess I'm kind of jaded about surf media. You know, like, did you watch this movie called I Care a Lot?
Yeah, I did.
How insane was that movie? That was such a good movie.
It was good.
It was fun, right? I mean, it was fun.
Yeah.
And so you see something like that and you're like, oh, am I going to get the same sort of conflict and resolution and kind of deep twists and plot changes with Billy Kemper's story? No. And really with nonfiction, it's hard to get those, but the really good documentaries have those. You know?
I love documentary.
Yeah. And so anyway, we'll see.
Yeah.
I want to watch it.
I guess not, with surf, like Mason Ho dropped his new thing with Mason and Michael at Backdoor. I was like, sweet, I want to watch that. I go to watch it and it's 27 minutes long. And I just think to myself, again, you just dropped an edit last week. I can't do this. I don't have enough time. If it was 3 minutes, I would have watched it. And so, but then I realized also I'm an old man now and my Lost references are 25 years old. And so is the new world, you know, kids, they gobble all that, they watch that, then they watch Jamie O'Brien's, then they watch Ben Gravy's, then they watch Nathan Florence's, and then so they gobble it up, but they're not probably watching the latest Netflix series that you and I are into or whatever.
Nor are they listening to Tim Ferriss with Jordan Peterson.
Or you and I right now. So I just thought like, God, am I too old for this? I'll pick and choose. And by the way, it'll take me 5 days to get to it. You know, I'll say, oh, Billy's out. Okay, put that on my list. Andy Irons, put that on my list. And then it'll take me a few days. Yeah. While I'm literally like eating lunch, shoveling food in my face. Yeah. Now I'll just take 20 minutes to watch something. Yeah. But it's hard. It's hard to track everything that's happening right now.
It is. It's hard. My must-see moment is Ian Crane's wax on, which isn't really that great.
It's a hilarious title, dude.
It is a great title.
Wax on, W-A-X on, right. Wax off, W-A-C-K-S off.
There's some moments of it that are cool, you know, but it's not like you're like, oh my God, David, I'm going to text you and tell you right now, drop everything and watch this.
No,
but it's fun. Good. Ian Crane surfs good. Carolyn Marks, that's a cool section. It's neat watching Morocco because I've been there a couple times. I'm into it. But, you know, I also then just flipped on Mick Fanning at Snapper edit on Surfline, and it was just as or more fascinating. And you know what else I found myself doing? Is I've been watching the Byron Bay Surfline cam while I'm in Zoom meetings. And it's kind of fun to just watch the pass.
Yeah.
Even though the surfing's just whatever and it's kind of pulled back. But anyway, that's my must-see moment. Ian Crane's Beachhead, because Ian Crane surfs good in that.
He's great.
And Carolyn Marks surfs good in that.
You said you like Morocco you like watching because you've been there a few times. The segment in Billy Part 2 where the waves that he actually gets hurt, the early part of that session, it's about a 3 to 5 minute piece of the documentary, is phenomenal. Seeing those guys at the top of their game. I mean, a lot of people make fun of Luke Davis, but the guy shreds and his style's so sick. And Koa Smith, and Billy himself, seeing Billy navigate those tubes after coming out of Hawaii that season, where he was navigating ones 2 and 3 times the size, he's just playing in Morocco, and it was the day of days at that particular spot, and really,
Yeah.
really kind of drained out. And those guys were just ruling out there. I could see me and you and I just being quaking in our boots, paddling into those waves, and they're just ruling out there. So that section I actually really enjoyed.
I'm just going to take a little bit of note to that. I don't think I'd be quaking in my boots. I'd probably be frothing at the mouth, excited and psyched.
You watch 1 or 2 of those drainers, dude, you'll think twice.
Just tow me into them, I'll be fine.
Yeah. Early entry, and then just stand there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so my Duke is the feel-good story of the week.
Yes.
Pauline Mensker. Did you track this?
No.
So she won the world title in 1999. I'm sorry, 1993. And sorry, 1993.
Yeah.
And ultimately used $25,000 of her $30,000 in winnings that year to just fund her travel. Like, she didn't have any sponsors. There was very, very little money on the women's tour. So she used the vast majority of her earnings to fund her travel. Yes. So there's a documentary that's kind of profiling, a documentary that's coming out called Girls Can't Surf. Yeah. And she's being profiled in that, and that year of her winning the title. And so somebody else, not her, but kind of one of the people who know her story, put together a GoFundMe. And they're like, hey, let's come up with the $30,000 that Pauline won and just gift it to her now. She's a bus driver in Byron Bay. That's what she currently does. And let's just do this as like a goodwill internet thing. And the internet rallied, and the GoFundMe is at $45,000 right now.
Cool.
And so I'm going to give you a quick backstory on Pauline, because people should hear her story and in preparation for the film. From Matt Warshaw's Encyclopedia of Surfing, he said 2 weeks before the event started in Hawaii, the 23-year-old Mensker had an arthritis attack, which, by the way, I didn't say that, but she has rheumatoid arthritis. So she had an arthritis attack that put her temporarily in a wheelchair. 7 days later, she began paddling her surfboard in a pool as a warm-up. On the day of the contest, held in wind-blown 8-foot surf at Sunset Beach, she scraped into the finals and won the title. I couldn't even brush my own hair, she said, of her pre-title attack. My body just shut down. And so from the GoFundMe page that her friends set up, they said, Pauline is a pioneer of the sport of surfing. The vast majority of her career was spent sponsorless, cashless, and competing while battling a crippling disease of rheumatoid arthritis, but that didn't stop her. In 1993, she made it to the top and became a world champ, solidifying one of the great underdog stories in sporting history. Whilst prize money is now a given in the professional sport, the ASP did not award world title bonus checks every year that the tour was run. Like other athletes during this time period, Pauline was never given a check for the world title, which she won in 1993. That year, she won a total earnings of $30,000, $25,000 of which she spent to travel to make it to events. The soon-to-be-released film Girls Can't Surf is the inspiring true story of Pauline and a group of rebellious women surfers in the 1980s who took on the male-dominated professional surfing world in a fight for inclusion, recognition, and equality. The film explores Pauline's story of never getting a major sponsor, competing on the world tour for 20 years, surfing her entire career with rheumatoid arthritis, all while getting paid a fraction of what the men were getting in prize money. I think that's the majority of it. It finishes by saying, even in the late 90s, she took a tent on tour and slept in friends' backyards while traveling on tour. She now lives in Byron Bay in northern New South Wales and works as a bus driver. She is the picture of determination, passion, perseverance, and deserves to be recognized for her achievements. So, Duke of the Week.
That's cool. You know, she's an interesting story because, you know, she came onto the scene when right at sort of the beginnings, if not in the middle of the whole Roxy surf girl thing, where it was like, you know, Lisa Anderson, and you had to be pretty. I'm just going to call it like I see it. The brand, she was extremely unmarketable to the brands because the brands were looking for this like sort of, you know, iconic figure, like a beautiful blonde that surfed good. And if you weren't that, they didn't really want to sponsor you. And Pauline, bless her heart, didn't fit that mold, which is a mold based on just this sort of, I mean, it's a patriarchal mold. It's a Barbie mold. And she was the anti-Barbie. And that she was just no surf brands would touch her. And her surfing ability was beyond compare, as is proven by her determination.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that the documentary touches on this.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah.
And shout out to everybody who rallied to come up with that prize check for her. That's pretty, just like a feel good story from the week.
How much did you give?
0. But somebody gave $5,000.
And I will remain anonymous.
Okay. It was anonymous, actually.
It's cool. I'm stoked for her.
Yeah. All right, Scott, great show.
Yeah, man. Great show. Until next time, adios and aloha.